So that's me. I'm Matt Powers. I'm all about soil, and we're going to be talking today. This is Michael Whitman. He is a biochar expert, among many other things. This is a representative from Subsoil, whose name is Kate?
Catherine Hinson.
Excellent. And this is Alexander. Alexander, your last name is? Carpenter. Alexander Carpenter. And these are experts that we're going to be having the panel with. I love soil, but I know enough about soil to know that we must have as many heads in the room as possible when we're talking about soil, for real though. Because, I mean, how many journal articles come out a month? And can you read them all? It's like, no one can. So we need to help each other, we need to work together, and we need to have things like this where we get together and ask questions and get it figured out. So let's start with that. I'll run around. Here we go.
So I just did an NPK test on my soil, and it's all depleted, and I'm thinking of getting like high super soil compost brought in. Is that the best route, or should I start thinking about chop and drop, my own compost, worm castings, everything that I can do at my own house?
So think of regenerative farming, or think of soil like a wheel, having many spokes in the wheel. And if you're missing a spoke, your wheel might be rolling down the road, but you're probably going to hit a bump or two. So, you know, all of those things you listed can all impact your soil quality. You said you got an NPK test, so that's kind of different. That's soil chemistry. The soil chemistry is dictated by the soil biology. So what I would recommend, you're on the right track. You definitely, first step is always the soil test. You want to develop a baseline. Just because your neighbor added a bunch of alfalfa meal or lime or something and it worked for them, doesn't mean it's going to work for you. Each soil is different. It's not a commodity. It's something that should be cared for and tended to. And the best way to start doing that is to not only get a chemistry test, but to get a biology test or a soil food web test. The best thing to do is find a local soil food web consultant in your area, because you want to get that test. You want your soil to be representative of the environment you take it from. If you ship your soil, or if it's dry and it takes 2 weeks to process, it's probably not going to show the same things that it showed in the actual grow environment.
You've got the essence of it.
Yes, you wanted to ask a question, or I just wanted to say one thing. The way I look at it is some people have dirt, some people have soil, and some people have living soil. There is a distinct difference. Biochar, how many people do not know what biochar is? I usually ask, in the old days, 14 years ago when I started, how many people know what it is, but now most people do, so I just wanted to know. Biochar is the management system of soil, in my opinion. It manages our water, our nutrients, and especially our microbiology. It's also carbon sequestration. For every pound we put in the ground, we're sequestering 3 pounds of carbon. Oh, sorry about that. So biochar is 4 functions, or 4 main points. Water holding abilities, incredible. Nutrient holding abilities, when you establish it properly in your soil, you'll reduce your runoff up to 80%. But for me, the most important thing is those little nooks and crannies, those little pores under a microscope that we see in biochar are luxury condominiums for our microbiology. And they advance it, and the colonies expand, and that's one of the things that we're really looking to do. And then, of course, every pound we put in the ground, we have sequestered 3 pounds of carbon gases from going into the atmosphere. It is the most significant way of sequestering carbon, or pretty much any technology above the soil, aside from what the soil does. So I just want to add that.
There's so many solutions. And that's the that's the thing that I've learned as a teacher of permaculture, especially because the way I teach is I seek out the other answers, I seek out the contradictions, the caveats, and the person that's doing that, everyone's like, oh, that's impossible. I want to know why it did work for them. So I mean, personally for me, I would go with the easiest route, and I would start growing I would do 5 cousins, because I could just throw it and walk away. And then I would be doing things like putting down biochar, when I chop and drop, so that it's right under there as you're chopping and dropping, so that as it breaks down, that decomposition gets trapped in there and the light, folding it in. But you might not have it for every area you're in, and the seeds just are so easy because they just promote themselves. It's like you plant one, you get 1,000 every time.
A lot of it depends on what your waste streams are, how the best way to process what your wastes are on your farm. If you've got a lot of food waste, vermicomposting is a better route to go. If you've got more ag or more manure or green waste, then thermal composting is a better way to process that. It's really just, I think, the basis is building that mulch layer, protecting that soil. You never want to have bare soil.
Awesome. Great question. Here we go.
Okay, so question one, is it a myth that sunflowers trap heavy metals?
No.
So it's true?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what do you do with those sunflowers after they're absorbed? Do you compost them? You send them to the dump? What do you do?
Yeah. Awesome. So this is the thing. We have these bioremediation plants, these phytoremediation plants, and some of them are gassing off the things that they're taking out. And we'll see that, oh, this does this and this does that, or this is embodying it. And we don't always see those on the same page. And that's really dangerous because there are people, and I keep hearing more and more about this, that are having food that they thought was really healthy, but it's been bioaccumulating heavy metals or other toxins, and it was phytoremediating instead of creating good food for them. And a lot of that has to do with first of all, soil testing. I mean, if you have heavy metals in your soil, you can find that out. If it's soluble and it's being uptaken by your plants, there's a pH issue, you know what I mean? Like, that you can address perhaps. If it's lead, you can you can be doing iron and phosphorus accumulating plants and tilling them in like a cover crop. And iron and phosphorus combine with lead to make pyromorphite crystals, which are not bioavailable. You should be doing this everywhere and running that really, really dangerous water that's filled with lead through soil filters that do this. So yeah, there are things, but we have to, it really depends. So like if we're talking about radioactive stuff, then, Paul Stamets' point of view is that you take the mushrooms out, right? You use the mushrooms to take it out of the soil, and then you're going to burn them into ash and store the ash. And then the other perspective, if it's on the other side of things, and when it's more like heavy metals, that you can put them into inner carbon chains, or that you can trap them in colloids. But again, if we're messing with the soil, if we're disturbing the soil, breaking those things up and oxidizing them, we might be releasing them again. So we really have to understand that our soils need to be not disturbed at certain depths. We need to be testing constantly, And that's why it's so important, to have these kinds of locations so that you can actually get that information. So if you do have toxic soil, you need to figure out what bioaccumulates it. You can thermophilically compost it, but you're going to want to test it afterwards and not just trust that it's gone or it's trapped in those carbon chains. There's thresholds to everything. And even if something like a journal that you read is saying that, oh, well, it removed this toxin from this person's field, it's like, yeah, at their concentration. What happens on your field at your concentration? And it changes. And at certain thresholds, there's tipping points with almost everything, right? So I think it's really important to test again after you try any of those protocols, and also identify exactly what you're dealing with. Earth Repair has a pretty good chart in the middle, but it doesn't explain to you where the things are going in the plant, or even outside of the plant if it's gassing off. I'm going to be focusing on that a lot, and interviewing actual researchers who are working on this. People who are removing glyphosate from soils using dielectric barrier charge. And there's fungal pathways as well. So there's a lot.
This is something that's new to me that I'm still learning a lot about, but I had the pleasure of meeting talking with Chad Potter.
Yeah, Chad's great.
Yeah, and this guy does really awesome work where if you do have some kind of toxic pesticide or heavy metal in your soil, you can send him a sample and he will test what strain of mushroom will actually run through there and clean his name's Trad Potter. He's Myco Matrix, I believe is the name.
Is he also Mushroom Mountain?
Yeah, yeah. TRADDCOTTER, and if you come by the Sim Soil booth, we have his book on display. You guys can feel free to flip through it. Please don't take it.
Yeah, it's organic mushroom cultivation and remediation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Would you like to add anything to that last one? Probably have a lot to say.
Yeah.
He might even be correct. I mean, that'd be great.
No, I'm going to take a different approach to this entirely.
Yeah.
If you go out in the world and you test soils for heavy metals, every time you find a soil that is rich in heavy metals like cadmium, arsenic, lead, and the like, you will nonetheless find a thriving ecosystem on that soil. So what does that tell us?
Yeah.
It tells us that an intact native ecosystem has the resiliency to accommodate to those heavy metals and not be poisoned by them. So on the one hand, we busy-minded monkeys can go out and do this technology and that technology, and we can filter this and subtract that and add. But boy, let's get lazy. Nature is already doing that. It already knows what to do. Our ambition, just out of a sense of energy efficiency and reposeful mentality, let's find out how nature does it, and in a different variation on regenerative agriculture, let's find out how we can bring that system to the soil so that we can just enroll nature to do what nature already knows how to do, and we don't have to reinvent the wheel. And that's why we have people like Elaine Ingham and me and others who say, look, you go out and you look at the life spectrum in those soils, and you'll find 50, 70,000 different species of microorganisms. And that's only the bacteria and the fungi. Nobody in this conversation is talking about the viruses and the prions. That's part of the soil food web too, but we haven't even gotten there yet, but nature has.
There's a microbe for everything.
There's a microbe for everything, and there's a microbe for everything. But see, here's the difference. Let's be Taoists for a minute. We have everything. Right? That's everything. And everything in everything is what we see until we relax our vision, widen our vision, and see the everything that's happening. It's so easy for us to get fixated on this thing and that thing and the other thing and miss the everything. And the everything is our master. We are part of everything. And there we get the humility, right? So I just want to add that as a perspective on this conversation, because I have found with my students and with my own work that if I knock myself out to build a soil that has this culture and that culture and 5 different composts, each one of which has a whole different suite, and they may have the same nominal species of bugs, but they're different strains of those species. And so we can have 10,000, 20,000 different microorganisms in our soil, and that's the soil that does most of the work for us. I'm lazy. I'm too old for this shit. Exactly. They already know what to do. I just throw them all in a heap and they duke it out. And because they're so diverse, you change the conditions, and the people, the bugs that were thriving in the former conditions go dormant, and the volunteers that are going to do well in the new conditions, they pop up and they say, all right, I'm taking over now, and the system continues as before. So there's a great wisdom in restraint that That said, I have to say that I'm a great busybody and meddler, and so that's my spiritual discipline, right? To not poke and rob the system too badly. But once we sit back and let it do its thing, we win, it wins, our crops win, and at the risk of grandiosity, the planet wins.
And that's why we have more than one person up here. Thank you. I recently, we'll go around. We'll start over here and we'll snake our way across. Rascal Turbigal, I recently interviewed him. He was talking about, you know those waste pools that Exxon created in Colombia and rainforest? There's plants growing right up on the edge of those things. We were talking about how that's possible, and it's because the fungi is creating that barrier, that buffer zone.
No, it's the system.
Well, all right, yes.
It's not the fungi, it's not the bacteria, it's the system.
Yeah, but it meant like they're the cladding on the actual roots.
Well, that's part of the system.
True. This is why we must have conversations. And this is why I edit everything I do.
I'm waiting for you to laugh at this. So I'm guessing double digging is out because I did it wrong about 30 years ago and I turned my clay soil into cement. And so I'm thinking, I never hear about double digging anymore.
Yeah.
No-till is the way to go.
Yeah, no-till is the way to go. I'll just repeat that because that's absolutely the truth. The reality is this: in the top 6 to 8 inches is where most of the nutrition is happening for the plants, for the plant roots, and they're going lateral. And if you want to see a beautiful visualization of it, you can go to Robert Kurek's booth in the Grace Hall and check out his book, Demystifying Roots or Understanding Roots. I think both are there. But yeah. On cue?
So, one of the most useful cover plants, one of the most useful cover plants is daikon radish. Daikon radish goes down up to 2 feet, and it breaks apart that hard pan, and it brings water out, and it doesn't. So, that's your off season, and then your next year's crop will be better, and then your next year's off season will be even better, et cetera, et cetera.
I've improved it a lot over the years.
I think that's similar to talking about being lazy, so you don't have to spend all the energy tilling.
Yeah.
We have everybody else doing it, our microbes, our plants, and
Yeah.
all these other functions that do that. I actually have only ever tilled something once when I'm in a new area that, is really disastrous and I want to fix it up a little bit. I might do it, but basically, no tilling. We have our plants, we have our microbes, we have everything that can work for us, so we don't have to break our backs and use tractors that create higher carbon footprints and all those things. So, totally unnecessary.
So it was, you were, yeah. I'm going to try to do the constellation across and then I'll double back around.
Great. I'd like to go back to your comment about the heavy metals and the ecosystem. Philosophically, I'm completely aligned with where you're going on that.
Practically, however.
Yeah, practically. So, I've got land that's got decades of glyphosate on it. I've got neonics in the soil. The plants will pick that material up and it'll make it available through pollinators, which I want to avoid. It'll put it in the food that I'm growing, which I want to avoid. So I'm trying to reconcile the philosophical approach with the practical and what's the best way to do this? You need to change the trajectory.
Yeah.
Well, I wish I had some magic bullet to give you. The truth is that the natural resilience of a native ecosystem has limits. And if we've gone out and we've dumped glyphosate and neonicotinoids and poured gasoline, old leaded gasoline on the soil, whatever, all the things that we humans are just so good at. There's limits, and I wish I had some simple answer to give you. It may be that if you do these efforts over enough time, gradually things will break down, et cetera. But if you've got a faster solution up your sleeve, Matt, take it away.
So in the past few weeks, I discovered this thing called dialectic barrier discharge. And what's really wild is it dovetails with what's happening in the medical industry for us, or the health industry, whatever you want to describe it. So what's going on is that, have you guys heard of ozone yet? Have you gone to the dentist and had them inject ozone into your jaw instead of using the antibiotics? Unbelievable, right? And then the whole like ozone liniment and stuff that they're using for cuts and everything, so knock out like infections really fast. That same idea of using ozone is now being applied to the soil. And there are 3 articles I've recently found that I'm reading about dielectric barrier discharge. And they're using ozone, they're using UV light that's created by the dielectric barrier discharge of 2 electrodes. And it's creating UV radiation, it's creating ozone, and that's gonna destroy the organic compounds, so the pesticides and the glyphosate are high efficiency degraded.
Wow.
Yeah, so you guys know the new pool filters where the UV light's on there, the water filters, you've seen these?
Yeah.
The same idea. So this technology, it's like micro to macro, in my body, in the soil's body. The modalities are connecting. Aerobic soil, you know? And now we're learning about facultative microbes more and more. Well, that's what's going on here, right? Anaerobic, facultative, you know, all these different things. Why do we break pre-digested, you know, facultative microbes? Because it's the pre-digestion. He wants to have some.
Yeah, look, practically speaking, these energy discharges are expensive.
True.
But that's a cost of doing business. And so there's a balance to be found between the zap and the weight.
Of always. And you're gonna have to put life probably back in, because it's biological bleach.
Yeah, in effect, you've sterilized your soil of all the stuff you don't want. Now you need to revivify it.
And I mean, those soils are pretty dead to begin with, right now.
Yeah,
So it wouldn't be like that you killed much life.
And some crops will pay for all of that better than others.
Okay, continuing along. Do you mind if I double back like this?
When you're in a new construction area, they really do a tremendous job wrecking the soil. How do you replace that? What is your recommendation? Replace it or renew it so it makes sense.
You would start with like planting perennial peanuts or daikon radishes. So you think about the ecological successions. Yeah, sorry. I always think I talk so loud, but I guess not. So you want to look at the ecological succession scale. If you think about how plants first came to grow on Earth, it was moss and lichen on rocks. And they slowly metabolized that rock and broke forth, kind of like the pilgrims coming to America. Each succession of pilgrims, the living conditions got a little bit better and a little bit better. So you have to start with things that kind of can compete in that gnarly, kind of more dirt compacted environment, like the daikon radish. And that daikon radish will go through, if you look at it, the shape of a daikon radish is like an auger. So it just kind of burrows into the ground and breaks up that hard pan so water can actually get to it. You know, there's no dirt that needs to really be thrown out unless you're dealing with something really toxic. It just needs to be brought back to life or revived. So.
Awesome.
Absolutely true, but practically speaking, the contractor is going to bring in a dump truck full of commercial topsoil, smear it in a thin layer, plant what he plants, and that'll look great for a year. And then the whole thing starts to die because there's nothing underneath it. So you really need to